and welcome. Today I am going to be propagating a bunch of my plants. I am going to be doing this just by taking cuttings and sticking them in some water. I have a few at some different stages, and the plants that I'll be propagating today are a pothos vine, my string of hearts, my mini monstera right there, and I will also be doing my snake plants, which I have a few different stages of them ready so I can show you. So this is honestly the only way I ever propagate my plants. I only ever do it in water, and I don't ever use anything really too fancy to do it. So I'm gonna jump right in by starting with a snake plant, and then I'll go through the others as we continue. Okay, so today we're gonna start with these snake plants. These are some cuttings that I've taken a couple months ago now from the mother plant. I'll show you how to take the cuttings on one of these leaves as if it was off the plant, and then we will get started on planting them. Okay, so I'll show you how to cut on this leaf. This is the way it would be up in the plant, and it had another half part, but these ones were growing super skinny, so that's why I decided to propagate them. And I kept the leaves long so that once I plant them, it still looks like a snake plant, even before it has the chance to get all the new offshoots. So what you're gonna wanna do is have your cutting here. I just cut mine flat, but a better way to do it is if you actually cut it down at an angle, like that. And then your cutting piece would look like that. When you cut them angled like this, it's gonna create way more surface area for the roots to grow out of, as opposed to just this little tiny spot here, which is probably why this one hasn't rooted that well yet. So that is how you would take your cutting, and then you can just stick them in some water until they grow roots. Okay, so let's check out some of the roots on some of these other ones. They're also not that long, but I like to plant these ones early just to make sure they get into the soil and they don't end up getting like soggy in the water. Just because they are a succulent, I don't think it's that good for them to just sit in the water. Maybe I'm wrong though, I might be. See, like those ones? And these are ready to go into a pot of soil and perlite. Okay, so these are the supplies we're going to use to plant the snake plants. I have my potting mix and a bunch of perlite. So we're just gonna use this relatively small pot for these cuttings, and I'll start by just first mixing in a bunch of perlite into this soil mixture and putting some in the pot. Okay, so I use basically half and half perlite and soil, and I'll just scoop a bunch of it into this pot here. And then I will just take a few of these at a time. So I'm just gonna stick these 3 leaves in here together. Make a little hole for them in there. And then I'm gonna do that until all of the cuttings are in there. I'm going to add in some more soil now to help them stand up a little better because it's not working out too good for me. This one is already getting a little shoot on it. So that's how you know you're gonna have a successful propagation, because pretty soon that entire shoot will just sprout up and be a whole new chunk of leaves in this one. So this one looks kind of janky right now, but that's okay because we're just gonna wait for it to keep growing, and eventually we could repot it if we need to. So I'm just gonna give it a good water to try to make it all the soil settle. And for this one, just like the other ones, I'm gonna water it until it comes out the bottom so that I can ensure it's evenly soaked all throughout the plant. So I like to give these a good water when I plant them so that afterwards I can just leave them alone for a bit and just kind of neglect them, because snake plants honestly do best with neglect. Oh, and there we can see it's coming out the bottom now. Just gonna move a little bit of this dirt around. And there we have it. Okay, so next up, we're going to be doing some of the vining plants. So I have a pothos and the mini ones there that I'm going to do. Let's start with the pothos. Okay, so this is one very long vine that I have. And I honestly don't want to cut it too short. I just want to cut it so it's not hanging down too far and so that it will branch out more vines farther up. For the rest of these plants, you'll need to cut them where they have nodes on the vine. So the nodes are these little parts by the stem, and those will grow roots out if it's put into water or soil. So for these ones, I'm going to just cut it right there. So this is my little cutting for now. So I'm just going to cut them so there's one node each on the leaves. And you can also see these parts on this stem there, roots could also grow out of that. Oh, whoops. Kind of silly to do this standing up, I guess. Okay, and this was just the end of it. It's gonna get the new leaf there too, because it's gonna already has a little baby one on there. So really I only took 4 off of that. I'm gonna take a couple more off that same plant, and then I'll come back when we're gonna stick them in the water. The other long vine on this plant isn't quite as long, so I'm just gonna snip off the very last leaf on it so that it'll start pushing out more vines and more stems elsewhere. Not really to take any serious amount of length off. So I would say these ones are honestly probably the easiest to do. I have this little champagne shoot and that's what I use. I like to use these for my propagations because I don't actually have proper propagation glasses, and because it has the smaller top, it's easy to stick them in there and not have them fall down. So I honestly didn't end up taking as much off here as like what I thought I would, which I think that's fine. Because I'm really just trying to grow that mother plant really big and bushy. Yeah, so there it is. And then in probably a couple weeks to a month, once the roots are about 1.5 inches to 2 inches, then I will put it in a very well draining potting mix and stick it into, these ones I'll probably just put in like a 3-inch pot, because pothos really do like to be root bound, and since they're just cuttings, I think it's best to put them in a small pot. I know some people would disagree or would do it differently, but that's just what I found works best for me, because I'm extremely prone to overwatering my plants. Okay, so next I am getting up on my couch here to take some cuttings off of this one. I can't really move it because there is parts of it that are pinned to the wall to keep it standing upright good. So for this one, again, I don't really want to take a bunch of length off of it, but I want to encourage it to shoot off new vines off of these ones that are already here. So for these really long 2 pieces, I'm just going to snip the top parts off and hope that it will branch out and eventually cover this entire wall. So this one I'm gonna take right there. So this one has the new shoot, this one, and I'm gonna cut it again there. So I have 2 different pieces. Over here, I'm just gonna take the very top new growth and that other piece there. These plants also, with these plants in particular, I've noticed that the new growth, it gets damaged really quickly, so it will get little brown edges or whatever if you like touch it or if you bend it a little bit, so just try to be extra careful with these ones. Okay, so again, I'm just gonna stick these guys right into this jar of water. Again, you don't need a proper propagation glass or anything. This is an old pasta jar, pasta sauce jar. I just stick them in there like that. And usually for these ones, I don't let them sit in the water as long. I wait just until they have about 1 inch, maybe even a little bit less than 1 inch of roots. I have read previously that people struggle with having the stems on these cuttings start to rot from just sitting in the water before they have the chance to properly root. I personally have never had this issue, but because I've read that, I've been very cautious of it, and I try to pull them out as soon as I think they would do well in the soil. So those are those cuttings fresh off the vine. So this is a cutting of that I had just put into the soil in April, at the beginning of April, and it's already grown like 5 or 6 new leaves on here, and it's doing really well. So I'm excited to see how that grows. Okay, so for both of these types of cuttings, I would, when they're ready, stick them in the same type of potting mix that I used for the snake plants. One with lots of perlite in a good pot with good drainage holes, because you don't want these guys sitting in too much moisture. And I think they just look so cute. I love propagating. Okay, so the last one I'm gonna do here today is my string of hearts. So this is her in all her glory. I think she's so beautiful and wonderful. And just so we can really appreciate how far she's come, I'm gonna add in a picture from when I first got it. So these string of hearts, they also have the nodes, which are right just where the leaves are, just like those other vines did. So my goal with this plant is to be able to cut off about half of it here and replant those cuttings right into the top so I could thicken up the plant as a whole, which is what I've been doing since I got it, to try to grow it more. So that's what we'll be doing today, and that's why I wanted to do this one separate from those other cuttings, because I do it differently for that purpose. Yeah, so honestly, I think I'm just going to grab some scissors and just chop it right there all together. Okay, so because I'll be sticking these right into the top, I like to only do these cuttings when it's a watering day so that I can just put the cuttings right into the pot. I also, for this one, I use rooting hormone, so I'll just dip the ends into rooting hormone before I stick them in the soil. And here, let's just go right about there. And I'm just gonna cut them all. Whew, I'm kind of sad doing that. Okay, so that's her with her little haircut there, and then these I'm going to stick into the top. Okay, so now I have just some water there. I have this rooting hormone that I use. And I have my pot on the floor, just so it's a little bit easier for me. So I'm going to peel off just this first chunk of leaves there, because that part is going to go into the soil. And I'm gonna take this paintbrush. Okay, and then that's my rooting hormone right there. And I'm just going to stick the stem literally right inside like that. You can just see a little bit of the powder on there. Look at her. I will have some work to do on untangling that, but that worked pretty good. Now I'm just gonna give her some water so that it can drain down and settle the soil. I'll need to go tip this pot a little bit to make sure all the water gets out. Okay, so that is her now. Still looks kind of straggly, but I'll fix her up in a little bit. So that's all the plants I have to propagate today. Thank you for watching, and I really hope you were able to learn how you can grow your collection for yourself. Thanks!